We have signed 5 leases in our time here at Valor Coffee. What is your number one regret out of all those?
One of them, the monthly charge just keeps going up unexpectedly. And it's more and more and more money. Like every year it increases with like hidden costs. And I wish that we would have known some things to make that not happen.
And that's why we're here today, boys, to enlighten our fine listeners, which most of you, if you're listening, you're probably in the coffee industry to some degree, whether you're a barista or you're coffee curious or you're actively starting a cafe. We started back in 2016. Were we best friends back then or no?
I didn't even know you guys.
I think you and I were.
Right. And then we quickly became best friends, Ethan, right?
That's right.
And, you know, being 19 years old and also just it being our first business, there was so much that we didn't know, especially about the stuff that we're going to talk about in this podcast.
Yeah, but hey, 10 years, 2 cafes, a roastery later, and we know a little bit now. Not a lot of it, but what little we do know, we want to share.
Yeah, well, what's wild is we've learned a lot about leases the hard way, as we mentioned. And also we have tools like freaking ChatGPT now to help us learn things, which is great. But we want to be an approachable resource for people that are starting cafes. You can consider yourself at the 4th seat at this table, our brand new table. So
yeah, baby.
Maybe we can.
You've already noticed, but
there's so many not hidden, but there's so many confusing words in a lease.
Yeah, there's like a whole dictionary of vocab.
It's like a second language.
Yeah.
It's like
you
there's
have
a
to
whole
learn.
industry around this.
Yeah, like commercial real estate. Super weird. But yeah, I mean, would you say that like signing a lease is the biggest decision that we have made in our business?
I mean, you could say so, because I just think about what if you sign the wrong lease at the wrong place? And we're not going to get too much into location specifics in this, but just specifically because of that, it's like sign a lease at the wrong place, you could be doomed from the beginning.
Right.
Or
and
even
then,
if it's at the right place.
Yeah, or like if it's at the right place. Yeah, yeah. If you look at these developments now, like I'm sorry, one that just comes to mind immediately is the Avalon in Alpharetta, or what's happening with Ponce City Market right now in Atlanta, and a lot of their food vendors. They simply just price people out, and then it's a revolving door because you can't stay in business either because of things that were foreseen in the lease, or maybe an unrealistic revenue share. We'll get into that, or by some other means, it's just they signed a lease that's too expensive from the start. Yeah, so you're totally right. Even if you do sign at the right place for the wrong price or terms, you could be doomed before you even open your doors.
Right.
A lease is kind of like a bridge to the person you're leasing it from. And even that comes in all different shapes and sizes. So what's nice about our experience over the years is we've worked with kind of private owners, we've worked with big companies, and then we've worked with kind of a medium size, like local real estate group. So that's a huge, I think, place to start too, is knowing who you're working with and kind of what you need to look out for. So as we go through and share what we've learned, I think there's specific things to look out for based on, what type of company or organization or person you're leasing from in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. The bulk of this program today will be reviewing terms that are on a lease that you need to know what they mean. And that may sound boring, but I want to start actually with whenever a prospective coffee shop owner is reviewing a lease, or actually when they're reviewing the terms of a building.
Yeah, or the listing. Or you're working with a real estate agent and they're throwing out terms about the space that you're about to walk into.
Exactly. Like let's say you believe in the location, you like the building, you like the thought of that place as a coffee shop, and then you see the listing, your real estate agent sets it before you. What are the first things you guys are looking at? Maybe we can start there.
What type of space is it? in terms of its current condition.
Sure.
Right. In terms of like, is it an old dilapidated car garage, or was it on the other end of the spectrum, like a coffee shop that is closed, that sort of thing?
Yeah. Is it new development, old development? There's plenty of things of that sort. And so the first, I guess, term that comes to mind for me is shell space. That ring a bell for you guys?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, with shell space, you have like a raw, unfinished space, like just the walls, maybe like a roof, really, and then not really much beyond that. So,
Specifically, not a floor, typically.
yeah, exactly. Or like,
gravel.
or it's even like concrete, but the concrete is cut, something of those means, to where you're really starting from scratch, which in some ways is good, in some ways is bad. Like pouring and cutting concrete is a very expensive task.
Gnarly.
So you really want to get into a space where you probably already have that stuff roughly laid out, which we'll get into in just a minute. But with something like this, you might have lower rent, but a massive upfront investment of capital before you.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you're going to improve the landlord's space a ton, likely with your own money, unless they're going to give you some money, which we'll also talk about in just a second. But if you are going to pour in a ton of money, then you can often negotiate a much lower rent. Perfect example is a space that we looked at in downtown Alpharetta one time, a long time ago, before we opened our cafe, literally in a basement.
What, 7 foot, 6, 7 foot ceilings?
Yeah. And terrible condition, probably like leaks everywhere. And this guy is saying, I'm not giving $1, but it'll be $13 a square foot, I think was literally the price, right?
Which $13 a square foot for a retail space is, I would say, incredibly low.
Yeah, insane.
For
So
reference.
to that point, looking back on that, it's like we could probably justify doing that in some cases.
Hey, it's still vacant, bro. Let's
it's
go
still
back.
vacant. Yeah. Well, he's probably inflated his price.
It could be $14,
over the years.
$15.
But to that point, you know, if you're going to spend $1 million on a place, it's more likely that if you're going to spend $1 million on capital, like improvements of a space, leasehold improvements, if you will, then you're likely going to get the space for a cheaper overall price. In the same sense of if you're renting a warehouse space versus a retail space in a downtown foot traffic heavy area, your lease is going to be differently priced according to those locations.
Right. And these terms that you're reviewing are like one of your first litmus tests into like, who are you working with? Are they someone who has experience, who understands these levers that you can pull
Totally.
as the tenant versus the landlord? So
yeah,
that's great.
But yeah, step up from there is white box. We've looked at a good share of white box spaces, right?
Definitely.
What's a white box?
I mean, the way I think about a white box is like it's almost got everything you need besides the coffee shop, you know? So kind of how our Dunwoody Cafe was delivered to us. It was a dry cleaners. It kind of got purged out, and the landlord did a good bit of construction to, get a second bathroom, make sure the HVAC was in order, drywall's up, flooring's in, but it's just kind of like everything's stubbed out. There's not like power run to where we want all the equipment. There's not water where we want it.
And we probably weren't quite there with Dunwoody, right? Even after their work, because I don't think that they ran the stubs.
I don't think well, that's fair. I'm guessing instead of stubs, more like there is power in the space. There is water in the space.
Yeah. I would take a step up from there and say, especially if you're working with new development and they're planning for a coffee shop to be in that space, there's going to be a stub in the area where the architect who made this floor plan thought that you would want to put a coffee bar.
Sure.
Which, to be fair, is often the wrong place.
Definitely.
From what I've seen. But talking about getting into an advantageous place, if you can make it work around that, then you're going to save yourself a ton of money, because then maybe you're like, I don't have to cut concrete or pour concrete at all. If there's a stub here and I can build my bar around this place, then we're good to go.
Which is why it's wise to have somewhat of a floor plan in your mind when you're looking at spaces.
Yeah.
Like when we were looking at our second location, our goal was to have an open space with a central bar. And we kind of looked at spaces through that lens. But if you're just blindly looking at spaces and saying like, that would be a good coffee shop, you might miss out on some of these early signs of like, where's the stub? Is there water? Things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, perfect example here. We, in this space, had a water in this wall behind us over here. And water in the wall, meaning that there's a bathroom behind us. So
water in the wall in a good way.
Like good water.
In a pipe.
And so knowing that, we made an L bar here. So we didn't have to cut as much concrete to run water lines. And then I think we had to end up cutting concrete anyways. So it's like, to that point, probably could have just done it. But
maybe similar concept in Alpharetta too, right? We kind of kept it in one area. Because, in your dream of a dream cafe, you're like, oh, I could put this over here. I could put this over there. And it's like, well, that requires an electrical and water run, a drain run.
Yeah.
You're cutting concrete. You just raised your build out cost by $100,000.
Yeah. And that's why a lot of times you don't see islands in coffee shops. Or just anywhere that is running water somewhere, restaurants, whatever. It's like you want to always have a connection to the wall, because it's likely that, or a connection across a certain plane, because if not, then you're gonna have to run it underground, and that's just always way more expensive. Unless you have a crawl space, right?
That's true. If you're in a more old house vibe, you're going under the floor.
That's right.
That's kind of sick.
So we've talked about 2 levels so far: shell space, which is a very raw delivered space to you as the tenant. We've talked about white box, which is a step above that. And then last is turnkey, which is what I mentioned earlier of maybe there was a coffee shop there before. Right. And I think turnkey, I would venture to say that most turnkey spaces, the landlord is usually like an established corporate entity. For example, like we have a wholesale customer in Atlanta that is opening in the bottom of, or they already have opened in the bottom of a big office building. Whoever owns that office building just wants a coffee shop to be in the lobby, and like delivered it to them basically completely done. And they just had to put their espresso machines and, dishwashers and stuff like that in there. So that is very different than our experience.
Yeah, totally. So turnkey is like, you could say it's the dream, right? It's the dream for everyone to not have to spend any money on their build out. If you're able to walk in somewhere and only pay for equipment, or maybe in some turnkey situations, not have to pay for anything,
right?
Then you're good to go. But I just think about if you're talking about the most ideal world, there would be a space that we wanted, and the landlord would be like, I'll pay for the entire build out. We got to get you here.
We love Valor so much.
We love Valor.
Valor.
So this is, you're ready to just move in and you don't have to pay for anything. So I would say there's a couple of things here that are likely to happen if this is the case. One, the rent is going to be insane.
Sure.
And I would say that's turnkey as a principle probably is likely with many different places that you would lease. But the reality is that they're going to say, yeah, we can talk about anything. Just the rent price at the end of the day is going to reflect what we're talking about. And we've had that conversation, and you might not be able to have that conversation because of brand power if it's your first place, because they might not trust that you're going to be able to cover the bill of your lease. Whenever you're talking about your second or third cafe or location, or maybe you're expanding in a certain place like we did in this space we're in right now, they were more willing to play ball on how much money they were willing to put forth, because they knew that we have a good track record and have a brand established and we'll be able to pay for our rent. But they're just like, the more you want, the more that month-to-month charge is going to be.
Sure. And I think that's like the positive side of turnkey. Maybe the like I would say, grungier side is that if a coffee shop goes out of business
Yep.
and the landlord's like, I got to get someone in this space. And we've definitely looked at our fair share of like ghost coffee shops.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously that just raises a lot of questions.
Yeah. It's like, why did they go out of business?
Yeah, exactly. So sometimes I feel like a turnkey opportunity can be tempting for like a first time coffee shop starter. But I would just say proceed with serious caution before you're just like, oh, great. I don't have to do anything. And the equipment's here.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember when we were in the phase of looking for our first location? Like we, at that time, like 2018-ish, we had a pop-up with our cart where it was like our first like, mini location. We were looking all around Metro Atlanta for spaces. Do you remember some of the spaces we looked at, like on LoopNet? They're just like, we were just so desperate, And
it's always bad when you look that way. Is it not? For the most part?
In our experience, I would say so, yeah.
How do you guys feel like we got connected through people?
Yeah.
Every time.
Totally.
And I mean, I think we might get into this too, but real estate agents are free, right? So for the most part.
Yeah. I mean, especially a lot of times in commercial real estate, there's not as many commercial real estate agents who want to represent the renter. It's like a lot of times like a commercial development will have an agent who's like over the project. It's not a very lucrative industry for the most part to be in commercial leases for a space like what we're doing.
Because it's not like a sale.
Yeah.
Right.
And so we have like a homie who's like doing it for us, and he kind of does bigger projects for the most part as like his main thing. But to your point, it's like you're not paying for it. It's the owner of the building who's going to end up paying the agent for bringing someone to the table. But to that point, like what's kind of y'all's outlook on like the individual ownership of a space versus like a giant company who owns a space? Like maybe someone like an individual guy or gal, like one of us sitting here, just like owns their own commercial space and they're trying to rent it out versus a mega corporation trying to rent out a space.
Great question. Some stuff off the cuff. I'm like, if I was renting a space from you, I would be like, how important is this to this guy, and how much cash he got to like help this thing happen and help maintain this thing, because if you can't swap out the AC unit or do a project if something breaks, I think you can run some high risk of like the owner of the building might be liable, but maybe they don't even have the funds to like upkeep the space like you need it to. But there's a lot of upside if you like this person. If they trust you, you trust them, you can probably just get like a more simple like handshake deal. And then on the flip side, which I think is high risk, high reward, because if that trust is broken or, things get ugly, it can get like real ugly versus I think with a mega corporation, in my experience, it's like so objective and impersonal for better and for worse.
Yeah.
So like, I think you're never going to get like hyper screwed by a mega corporation, because like
hot take.
I don't think they're going to do something that's like so out of line.
Yeah.
Because they have to report to so many people.
Well, it's like no one from the corporation is like could be individually crazy.
Yeah.
Like they're functioning within a system and an equation.
Yeah. So with that though, that equation involves them making sure that they are making money. You know what I mean? And so I think on the dark side of that, there's probably just going to be a little bit of hiddenness, maybe a 60, 70 page lease instead of a one pager like, I'm going to cut you a check.
Here's the rent
for $2,000.
Yeah.
And that's that. Versus like, boom.
Yeah.
70 pages of if this happens and if this happens and this happens. So you can get a little lost in the sauce, I think. But those are my takes.
On that note, one of the questions, understandably, that anyone has when they're starting a coffee shop is how much is rent? Like, how much can I expect to pay? And if we're talking about what you're looking at on the listing very early on, you're going to see a price per square foot number as opposed to this is the rent per month.
Right.
And I think there's that it's probably configured that way for a lot of reasons, but one of them is the price per square foot is somewhat tethered to the rest of the market in that area. You know, like in our first location, it's in a real uppity area. And we were seeing, like, I know it's weird to talk about numbers, especially when we have a global audience, right? But like in our experience, prices per square foot have been somewhere around where? $20 to $50 per square foot.
I would say that's a fair range.
Yeah.
Yeah.
High end, better have foot traffic, you know, better have like businesses around it that attract a lot of people. And then your next obvious question should be, okay, if I'm paying $42 per square foot, which who would ever do that, right?
Idiots.
$42 per square foot. How much money do I need to make to make that work? And we'll get to that later. But just quickly, your price per square foot is on, you calculate that by multiplying it times how many square feet you have. Mm-hmm. So if it was $42 per square foot and you had a 1,000 square feet place, that would be $4,200.
$42,000.
$42,000. And then you divide that by 12.
Your per month cost.
And that's your per month cost.
Yeah. And sometimes if you're looking, you'll see square footage. A lot of times it'll be like X amount per square foot per year or like per month. If it's per month, you don't have to do the divide by 12, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that was kind of when we first started getting into this, we like were hearing numbers like $30-$40 a square foot, and we looked it up and it would be like $42,000. We'd be like, what?
Right.
We can't afford
We're not even going to
$40,000.
make that in a month.
And by the way, if you're new here, you may not know that we have an entire online community with well over 1,000 members at this point. It's all people that have listened to the podcast and kind of got connected through our YouTube channel. But it's geared towards people in the industry. And on the community, we have this document that lists every vocab term that we're talking about on this podcast. So that's a resource for you. The top link in the description of this video, click on that, sign up. It's completely free. Go to the resources tab, and then you'll see this master document that has all these vocab terms that we're speaking about. And it has a lot more resources than that, but
Cool, slick videos too.
very slick stuff. So definitely go check that out. But if you've figured out your price per square foot,
yeah,
what's next?
I think you were getting at it, so I just want to make sure that question gets answered of like, how much should I be paying, you know? So I think what we try to say around here is like, okay, if take that model, $42 a square foot, 1,000 square feet in your space, that rent comes out to like $3,500, and you're like, great. How much money do I need to make in a month to like feel good about that?
Yeah.
I would say we typically say like 3 to 8% is your range. I know it's kind of a big of your like top line, what's coming in every month. And so if you just find that number
divided by, if you do divided by 5%, that would show you your 5% number.
Go ahead, Ethan.
Okay. $70,000 a month.
Yeah. So that's what you need to be making top line revenue.
So divide $70,000 a month by 31 or 30, whatever.
Or 30. 2258.
So, you know, that's a busy coffee shop.
That's a busy coffee shop. And $42 a square foot is high-ish. Like that's how much it is in Alpharetta. But I would say too, smaller space, higher per square foot number.
True.
Bigger space, lower square foot number. Do we want to jump right into, that's not just the final price though for a lot of places,
yeah,
right?
Totally.
Yeah,
So
skip right down there.
There's a few different terms that are going to come up. And obviously the cost per square foot is the listed price.
Yep.
There'll often be another one called CAM or TICAM or something of those sorts, that is going to change just that number to be something completely different. And the way you get to that number is first understanding what the type of lease you're getting into is. And there's two different ones. There's gross lease and there's triple net lease. And the way how much you're going to pay is going to be completely dependent on those. So gross lease you can look at in the way that you would look at an apartment that you would rent or a house that you would rent. In most cases, obviously it differs between leases, but for the most part, one of the pros to renting a house as opposed to buying a house is that if something breaks, you're going to tell the landlord and they're going to send someone to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be more of a gross lease. You just don't see this in commercial real estate as much. And then if you do, you got to think about it. If you think something is too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. So if you're like, oh, this is a gross lease, you're probably paying more for that space than if it was converted to be a triple net lease. Like landlords are probably smart and are probably going to price in what they're going to do for you, especially if you're working with a larger corporation.
Smart.
So if you're like demand-it upon, like you're talking to like someone who knows what they're doing, and you're like, I don't want the triple net lease, I want the gross lease. They're going to be like, okay, we can do that, but I'm going to protect myself from whenever something happens.
50 a square foot instead of 42.
Exactly. So, and then, so if we're talking about triple net lease, the big differentiator here is like, you are going to have to pay your share of the property taxes. It's like the landlord isn't going to do anything.
I ain't doing jack.
Yeah. And because they're trying to turn a profit here and they're giving you the space for a lower square footage price to justify doing that. So it's like, you are going to have to pay for the property taxes, the insurance, and the maintenance of the space. And that can look a few different ways, because you can price in some things that take off what would be a very heavy load. Like in this space that we're in here, this is a triple net lease. If something breaks or whatever, like if our plumbing backs up, like we probably have to pay for it. But we do have specific verbiage in our lease that our real estate agent helped us conjure up. That's like, if something breaks with the HVAC system, the landlord has to give X amount before we will have to pay for the overage.
Which is an example of
timing.
something we would have never thought to do or known how to do had we not had a real estate agent.
Yeah. So with that being said, it's like, just because it's triple net doesn't mean that some other things within that aren't negotiable. You can put anything you want into writing and have it, whatever way. And then, you might have to take legal action to get these things to actually happen. I'm not saying that it's going to be like super easy, but it's like, propose whatever you want, put whatever you want in writing. That I will say that it's like, it's not going to hurt you to ask. Don't be passive just because you're scared of like offending someone who you're about to do business with for 5 years. Like, get it all out on the table and be like, hey, I'm cool with triple net, but if there is a massive plumbing issue, if there is a massive HVAC issue, I want to put this stuff into writing to where I can be protected to some extent. And then the landlord might come back and say, okay, yeah, we can do that. It is going to increase your rent square footage price by $1 a square foot to do that. You do the math and you're like, okay, yeah, that still comes out better for me. Yeah, let's do it.
It's a great example of that here is there have been times where we've had plumbing back up because of our neighbors. It's like backed up into our drains. Mm-hmm. And so that's a great example of why that clause that our real estate agent put in there has pulled a lot of weight for us. So, yeah.
Yeah. Or even what I was mentioning earlier about like, if the HVAC goes out, who's on the hook? It's like, I don't think a lot of people understand that you're on the hook.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I rent it, so it's theirs. It's like, sorry, dude. I feel like we've learned that a lot. Basically, my takeaway too is nothing's assumed, like there's no such thing as free lunch. You're not getting out on easy street often when it comes to this kind of stuff. So the lease is like the time to get that stuff in writing. And maybe talking about CAM a little bit, we can revisit top of the show. Biggest regret is that something you can ask for is like terms on these prices.
Yeah. And that acronym he mentioned, CAM, CAM, or TICAM, or some people put like CAM TI. So it's always kind of different. But that means common area maintenance. And then the T stands for taxes and the I stands for insurance. So that number, even if you look on LoopNet or whatever, oftentimes, or you contact someone, what have you, they'll give you the price per square foot and then they will give you the CAM number. And that CAM number is variable. And that is what is, I think we really didn't know going into things. Every single year, whenever the property taxes changes and the landlord audits or looks at their P&L from the last year, they're like, okay, we spent this much on common area maintenance when we thought we were going to spend this much. We spent this much on property tax when we thought we were going to spend this much. Same with insurance. We're going to bill our tenant this difference in one lump sum. And then we are going to turn around and raise their CAM for the next year on this new adjustment.
Right.
And I'll just come out and say it. Our Dunwoody location has been screwed by CAM and TI adjustments or tax and insurance adjustments. And a part of that is because we go in there and then they're like, oh yeah, we're going to pave the entire parking lot.
You're like, great.
Yeah. And then it's like, yeah, you paid for that.
Right.
And that's all part of getting into a lease that was a triple net lease. And, that's on us for not doing what you're saying and negotiating in a cap to that CAM.
And here's the double owie is that other businesses in that complex that are all owned by the same group are smart enough to negotiate CAM caps in their leases. And so what that does is concentrate the increase to the people that don't have that cap.
Yep.
So it's not just a equal spread, but it's like, oh, well, you can't charge this one. They have that. So that's where those increases year over year can really sneak up and hit you.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe we can talk a little bit too about leverage as the tenant. What leverage do you have and how do you go about getting leverage? And I think a good thought experiment is comparing and contrasting our two retail locations. Our first location, Alpharetta, like I said, we were a cart. We were just starting out. And the space that we ended up expanding into, the landlord that we were working with kind of felt like they were doing a favor for us.
Sure.
By giving us that space. And I can understand that to some degree. Like,
yeah, they didn't have to do that.
Right. The rest of the building, because we're just part of the building, is a co-working space. And you can imagine if you're renting out co-working space, like you're making a lot of money because you're in the whole business of like renting space. Mm-hmm. If you put an office somewhere, and you rent that out at a much higher price per square foot rate than you would the size of our space, which our exact square footage of Alpharetta is like around 1,000, right? Around 1,100. There. So we had like no leverage because the landlord felt like they were doing us a favor, right? But in our second location,
and we were a first time business, so we didn't have a track record of payment, like consistency.
Facts.
Absolutely. And that space could have very easily been something else.
It was a very high demand space.
It's not like it was sitting vacant for months or years. It's like the complete opposite. It was just something else, and they converted it to a coffee shop just for us.
Yeah. It was an off market pickup too.
Off market, yeah.
So it's like that's a dangle. Oh, you want me to put this on the market and see how much it goes for now?
Right. So some time passed where we only had one location, and we started looking for a second one. We were looking all over. What a process, right? You're looking in like Duluth. Remember when we went over there?
Oh yeah.
Chamblee, South Atlanta,
all kinds of places. And pretty early on in the process, we toured or like at least stood outside of our Dunwoody space that we would months later end up. What was it, like 9 months later that we ended up actually signing the lease there? My point is that space that we ended up renting in Dunwoody for our second location sat vacant for quite some time. Like, do you think it was a full year that it was vacant?
I don't know how long it was vacant before we looked at it. So
it could have been for even longer, right? Yeah. And so you look at that and you're like, oh, that's a red flag. and it was a red flag to us at first. And it wasn't like that cool of a space.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like the exterior was like, really on brand for us. But that ended up playing in our favor because it did sit vacant for so long. And the landlord, like we had mentioned earlier, was a big, massive real estate corporation and reached out to us because they liked our Alpharetta location and wanted a Valor in their complex. So two worlds different situations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what makes me, to your point, it's like we had way more of the leverage in the situation because they came to us. We had the brand power. They had a space that they really, really wanted to rent. So that helped us in negotiating the things that we're about to talk about. And that makes me regret even more that we weren't like
Cam cap.
This is what we're going to pay max for Cam because we probably would have freaking gotten it.
Yeah.
You know?
And you had the most leverage before you've signed the lease.
Exactly. Now that we've signed the lease, why would they ever make less money than what is in paper?
Can we please pay you less?
Right.
Please.
I mean, to be fair, if they wanted to talk about us sticking around
Secure
and they
the
didn't
bag
want
for
their
the
space to
extension.
be empty in between, the bummer to that side of things is that that's a really cool space now that they would have a lot easier of a time renting out to someone else if we were to come up vacant.
Exactly. And to that note, let's say you have a ton of leverage or you have no leverage. What are the levers that you can pull or not pull if you don't have leverage? I mean, the first one is TI, tenant improvement.
Yeah. And we've talked about that earlier when we were discussing types of spaces. Tenant improvement allowance is what the landlord is going to be willing to give you to put towards the space. And oftentimes, the more tenant improvement allowance, the more your rent is going to be.
Or maybe even the longer your lease is.
Or the longer your lease is going to be. Exactly.
There's that. And then I'd say one thing about that is depending on how like legit corporate your landlord is, that isn't just money to go to your space. Like you can't just buy an espresso machine with your TI, but the whole concept is that you're improving the space. And so what we had to do in Dunwoody was send them like the contractor, the GC's invoices for the electrical work, the plumbing work, the drywall guy.
Yep.
And they had to verify that the money that they were about to send us was going to their space, not like
an espresso machine.
We hired an artist to do a mural.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
And TI is typically calculated by square foot. Like they're willing to give so many dollars per square foot of TI.
Exactly.
And like it makes sense. Like a landlord gives a future tenant a ton of TI, and their thought is like, even if I only worst case rent this for 5 years to this tenant, I can turn around and rent it to an ice cream shop or another retail establishment that would hopefully use the same bones that I invested in as the landlord.
Mm-hmm.
A DIY bedazzling studio. I don't know.
It could be anything.
Just
really.
an idea.
Really anything. Yeah. So TI, obviously, that's what a lot of people are looking for when they go out searching. Another one that is kind of a dreamer scenario is if you can mix that with this thing called rent abatement. And I really like rent abatement.
Ooh, me too.
Because it means you do not have to pay the main portion of the rent, or you pay a portion of the main portion of the rent, as in excluding CAM and taxes and insurance, because you're going to have to pay that regardless in pretty much every scenario.
Mm-hmm.
So
this is like during your build out and early opening, typically.
Yes, that, and then, yes, but to that point, I would say negotiate and we'll get to this in a second. If your date of commencement is tied to when your rent starts, like for example, our Dunwoody location, our commencement date was when our rent abatement started.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're saying our commencement date is tied to us getting our CO, our certificate of occupancy.
Yep.
Which means that the build out is done. So at that point, the rent abatement starts, and the rent abatement is free rent. It's like you're in the space, not paying money.
Mhm.
So a lot of times it'll be like this space, we had 50% rent share mainly because it was like we doubled our space. So they were just wanting us to keep paying rent on the old space. So 50% rent. But if you're able to negotiate that, this is a lever where you can pull and get like big brain mode to be like, I'm going to be building my business at the start. Maybe it's worth negotiating rent abatement and making my rent higher for months 6 to 72, as opposed to having it more concentrated up front. So again, if you negotiate this in, it's likely that they're going to charge you more money for your rent overall when it starts, but that pressure within the first period of your business is going to be a lot lower.
Rent abatement, TI. What else is there? I would just say too, looking between our two leases, we have very different experiences, right? How do you guys remember how much TI we got for our Alpharetta cafe?
$0.
Do you remember how much rent abatement we got for our Alpharetta cafe?
Zero.
Right. Did we figure it out?
Heck, I think we started paying rent during the build out in that space.
Yeah. The rent commencement was when we took over the space.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that to poo-poo on the situation, but to give context to what you were saying, like these guys have a space that they can very well just keep leasing as an office, and tenant B could have just moved in and started his or her office space.
Probably for a higher price.
And like effective immediately, and they're not changing anything integral about the space.
Right.
So there obviously is that like, yeah, you guys can put a coffee shop here, but we're not really handing out like favors for this. Like we don't really care.
Yeah.
And that's at like interest level versus Dunwoody. They're like, yes,
couldn't be more different.
Let's do it.
Another thing at this stage is a rent escalator. When I heard about this for the first time, I was like shocked, but then it kind of quickly made sense to me. Basically, there is a percentage. Is it yearly that it's calculated?
Typically. Or calculator, just like you could see, typically when you sign the lease, it's not like a percentage, but maybe it is a percentage, but like they'll say like years 1 through 3 this month, year 4, year 5, year 6.
Basically, your rent goes up.
Yeah, or it'll be on a 5%. Like the verbiage is different, but we basically call it an escalator. It's like 5% year over year, and that compounds. So it's like, it's a lot.
It's not like $200 more a month every time. But
and they're doing that for inflation. They're doing that for the assumption that the area is going to grow around you, and the price per square foot is likely going to grow for new leases that are being signed. But at least it's in writing, and they're committing to a certain amount, which is different than CAM,
right?
Where we wish we would have put a cap on the CAM that they can charge, but we just completely left it in their hands for them to decide what they're charging us.
And once again, like maybe you can negotiate a flat rate. It's just probably going to be higher,
Yeah.
It's like you pull one thing, the other thing.
Yeah, they're just going to sit down and calculate the number that is going to be the same amount divided by the months of the lease.
Right.
Anyways. And that's not saying you can't negotiate it down, because you can negotiate all of that. But I would say in most cases, you're going to end up in a situation where your rent is going to increase year over year.
And most leases are going to have a security deposit.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember what that looked like for our leases?
Dude, I think most of the time it's just a month.
A month of rent.
Yeah.
And you get it back.
Yeah.
Not that you should count on that.
Yeah, you probably won't get it back because they're going to find something about the space that's decrepit. And then also, if you plan on being around and existing there, like for beyond the first term of the lease, it's just going to be theirs.
Like don't bank on $4,000 later.
Yeah.
And I do think about that often. I'm like, if we ever leave these cafes, I can't imagine what we're going to dredge up when we like unhook everything.
Gunk.
And then I'm like, can we take what's ours? Can I take the freaking tile off the wall?
Sure.
Maybe we put that there.
Right. Yeah, you can't. You can't take that because that is a leasehold improvement. You can only take I'm just answering the question.
Wait, you're saying I cannot?
You cannot take that.
Why did we put tile on the wall?
I know, dude. It's crazy.
So it sucks to suck.
Can we take this plywood?
It's like, yeah, I don't know.
Well, I mean, if we took it off, we would be destroying the bar, and that would suck for them.
You
But
take
anyways,
the espresso machine, take the record player.
I don't want that.
Well,
I want the plywood.
I don't know what to tell you.
moving on to, like when you're signing a lease, you're doing so as your LLC, yeah, or like your business.
Who's a lease?
Like we're signing her to our team.
I'm sorry, I just heard that too many times. I had to say.
They are likely going to require you to personally put yourself on the line beyond just like your business is not enough, basically.
Yeah.
Or you have to personally be the what's called guarantor.
Yeah.
Which is like your own personal assets.
When I had to put my home address on the Dunwoody lease, like you're doing business stuff, and then you start like putting your personal information, your address. You're reading the fine print about if you can't do this, we're gonna get your house. You're like,
yeah, this better work.
Oh yeah.
And that's why the Valor Coffee podcast is here to help you figure out if it's going to work or not.
Yeah, and this is something you're going to run into not just on leases. It's if you get a loan, it's going to be the same way. Like even if you get a government small business administration backed loan, SBA loan, you're going to have to sign as a guarantor. Like get used to it.
Where does the buck stop if you default?
This is the risky part of entrepreneurship.
Right.
So an LLC doesn't protect you from everything. They need to find a way to touch your personal assets if something goes awry.
So if you don't want your personal assets touched, maybe don't get into this.
Yeah. Kind of already hit on it. Next term commencement date.
Yeah.
I think that we said pretty much what we need to say there, but just to maybe rephrase it a little better, this is the date that you're saying your lease is going to officially start. So most of the time you want to negotiate this to be after your build out period. And so a lot of times it'll be like, it's either when you get the CO or 6 months from signing of the lease or something like that, because then the landlord is protecting themselves of if you get a general contractor who is slow, the landlord should protect themselves and be like, yeah, we're only going to do this for this long. Your general contractor better be good.
We seem so pro landlord. What's up with us? But it's real though. They're trying to run a business.
Yeah. So commencement date is really going to be when you get either when your rent starts or your rent abatement period starts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, is there anything we want to say about like build out and permits?
I mean, I feel like the thing that we always just say is it takes more time than you expect.
Yeah.
I think I don't know if we've been proven wrong yet, but anytime we're talking to someone that's like just signed a lease or is like going to start a cafe, they're like, I think we're going to be open by the summer. And I'm like, okay, so next winter. And it's not in a mean way, but it's just like, dang, there's just so many moving pieces to that thing. And you have to really work with the government typically. And government doesn't work on your timeline, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. And delays are compounding.
It takes time to draw up plans even. I feel like that's such a sleeper concept that people don't consider, is like finding your architect, developing the plans, and then getting those submitted. So I was just, and that's why negotiating your commencement date and your rent abatement is so important, because you don't really want to start that until like you're going to be there, right? So it's kind of hard to like cart before the horse. Like I want to get my GC in order. I want to have a space kind of mocked up. But there's only so much you can do until you like get that space. Mock?
We talked about this to great extent in our 3-hour masterclass on how to start a coffee shop, which you gotta check that out.
Ross is like,
we put our elbow grease and all of our time into that course. So check that out.
Maybe even linked below.
Looking at you, Dom. Thank you. You mentioned GC architect. Like, can you just briefly explain the role of those two people? in this?
Sure. Well, so on the architect draws the architectural plans for your space. I think only like there's been one exception to the rule. Someone doing a cafe in a very rural environment or more rural environment where you didn't need to do all this. But typically you need a big piece of paper, many pieces of paper with.
It literally is big. Like
it's big and it's deep. So there's like.
Where do they even print that thing?
How do they print these massive plans?
Yeah. FedEx office centers. What do we don't have them, but people always say them. Kinko's or something.
Kinko's? Like go over to Kinko's and print something?
Yeah. That's like a thing of old. I don't even know what that is.
I think that's out of
It's like
business.
Blockbuster.
Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Kinko's. So yeah, it's like a map of all the electrical and where it's going and how it's going to go. And then turn the page, a map of all the plumbing. And then it's like different pages.
MEP, what does MEP mean?
Mechanical, electrical, plumbing.
Yeah.
So typically, and what's funny is you have an architect and then the architect has to work with an MEP engineer to do those parts of it. And then also if you're like bougie as, maybe even have like a designer who's working with the architect to like.
We've never had that budget.
Yeah, no. So that's just
never needed it.
Yeah, look at this.
And look how cool
Look around.
looks. So you have to like go through all that, and they're not working on your
buddy.
timeline either.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's the architect, and that I mean, at least in our experience, that architect needs to submit the plans that they make to the proper governing offices. You know, so that's like friggin' health department, frickin' city, frickin' fire marshal, frickin' wastewater sewage management. There, every time you think that you're in the right spot, and then someone's like, "Have you gotten this thing done yet?" And you're like, "I needed to do that." And they're like, "Yeah, you have to fill out this form, and you have to get this permit for this thing." And you're like,
they're just trying to keep us safe, Ethan. They're
Hey,
trying.
yeah,
They're
whatever.
trying to
It's so
keep us
different
safe.
county to county because like in DeKalb County, we were like, when's the fire marshal coming? And they're like, oh yeah, fire marshal doesn't come in DeKalb County. It's just like the building inspector does that too.
right.
And you're
But,
like, wait,
yeah.
what?
Architect submits to all these government agencies to make sure it's in code.
And
the plans
I would
are.
just say, like, you want to pay the money if it ever gets itemized. You want to have an architect do that. You don't want to be that person to be like, I can save money by handling all these like permits myself.
Yeah.
Just don't do it.
But there is something to be said about the agency that you're working with, depending on the size and scope of the county. Because if I talk to Elijah Knapp of Elliott Coffee right now,
sure.
he would be like, yeah, it was on a napkin.
Yeah.
And that's why
I think he made his plans.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons that his build out costs $80,000, which link below if you want to check out that video. And
Thanks, Dom.
And but to that point, it's like if a government agency requires more and more and more of these specific things, like you need a grease trap, you need this, that is what ends up making your build out cost $400,000 as opposed
And take
in a lot
9
of
months
cases
to get your permits, not 30 days.
Exactly.
Okay, so architect, and then how does a GC
So
play
then,
into that?
so then you're going to run into this concept a lot of like, who's going to pull the permits? And you're like, duh. You need someone with a general contracting license to go to the city government and be like, I'm going to take these plans and I'm going to execute them. And you're going to come inspect my work.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get Joe Schmo. You can't go to the city and say, I would like my plans, please. They're like, no.
Where's your permit?
Where's your permit? Or no, you're getting
license.
You're getting the permit. You have to have a license to get the permit. So
In some counties.
Yeah.
sometimes, this is from our experience in the North Georgia area,
Right.
They're just
Metro
trying to keep us
Atlanta.
safe.
which is standard ops. Okay. So while your architect is working on this, you're taking whatever they're giving you and you're trying to send this around to general contractors to get a quote on your job. And this general contractor is going to give you a quote for the job. You're going, please send your plans to multiple contractors.
Yeah.
Please. The numbers are insane, how much they vary. It's like different types of businesses. How much is the general contractor going to do the work themselves? How much are they going to be subcontracting? Everyone's going to be subcontracting to a certain degree because they're going to get a HVAC person, they're going to get a plumbing person, they're going to get an electrical person. Maybe they do the framing and drywall to save you a little money. I don't know.
Well, to that point, it's also like you talking about individuals versus corporations. It's the same exact thing no matter what you're doing. It's like paying that very, very small price is going to get you a level that paying a lot bigger of a price is not going to.
Sure.
If I looked up a contractor who did XYZ Michelin star restaurant, beautiful build, and I wanted to use their architect, interior designer, general contractor, start to finish, that's going to be a lot different of a price than the dude who did our Alpharetta Cafe.
100%.
The guy who has a buddy to pull permits and he primarily does decks.
Exactly.
So when he sends you a price that is in your budget.
Yeah. We could have an entire episode on Buildout.
Of
easily.
course.
And so I think we've said what we needed to say.
Yeah.
So really nitty gritty, like you're ready to sign the lease. What are the last things to consider here? Or even like before signing the lease, I guess.
I would say something to consider is paying money for a real estate lawyer to review your lease.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I wouldn't say that in our short history, it hasn't like super duper like, this saved our lives here. We used a real estate lawyer the first time and we didn't really have a lot of power and leverage. So any negotiations were a little moot. But because we had a great buddy for our other ones who I think did a lot more work than probably a typical real estate agent would, we kind of got that quasi lawyer feel. You know what I mean?
Yeah, quasi.
Definitely.
We found someone who was at least willing to send back comments to a lease. I would say like if you're not sending the lease back and forth with like notes and comments and red lines, you're missing out, right?
Yeah, totally.
And before the lease is a letter of intent, the LOI.
Sure.
It's kind of like you're engaged.
Yeah.
To the space.
You're betrothed.
You
Exactly.
haven't,
but you can break off that engagement with no strings attached. Most of the time.
Yeah, it's non-binding, but it just lays out all of the terms. Can you even have multiple LOIs out on a couple spaces, kind of play the field?
I mean, you
see
could.
What happens?
I would, and
I mean, it's messed up.
Make sure you're reading them nice and neatly and buttoned up. But like,
it could be
really that just saves your spot in line on if the space is desirable,
right?
But the last thing I'll say here is think after the lease too. And a lot of ways that you can do this is surrounding the term of the lease. So first of all, how long are you going to be in the space? That's going to change everything that we've talked about in terms of pricing and what the landlord is willing to do for you, et cetera. But then once that is up, try to leave it to where you're not just high and dry. And this is going to be where lease and term options come into play. So, first of all, there's that in and of itself. You'll hear people say 3x3x3 or 5x5x5. I would say just don't get into a lease that's too short.
Sure.
Don't sign a 1-year lease on a space. I would say at least 3 years. For us, pretty much everything we've ever done has been 5 or 6.
Yeah. You're just talking ROI, return on investment.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're putting so much time and energy into a concept.
Yeah.
If you left after a year,
gosh,
you're the fool, unfortunately.
Oh, for sure. And if it's a turnkey, we'll say that. Okay.
Hey, yeah. You know
if you're getting a turnkey spot and you're walking into somewhere with equipment and everything, you could be like, okay, this place could be an S show. And it could drive no traffic whatsoever. Maybe I'll rely on my brand for justification for me to be here. But since it has everything and I'm not putting any money into it, I'll just sign a 1 year with an option to extend. Maybe even sign like a 1x5 or something crazy.
Kind of a prove it deal.
Exactly. Yeah. And if they want you, hard enough, it's like, I'm thinking about us. Like if we, with an established brand, if someone was like, hey, we want you here. The last coffee shop did $150 a day.
You're gonna do 200.
We can do one with a 5.
Yeah.
1 year lease with a 5-year option.
Yeah, exactly. So, but with that being said, it's like you can even negotiate all the way to like 5-year lease, and then we get an option for another 5-year lease. We get an option. You have to renegotiate terms with all of those,
Sure.
but at least they have to come to you first. And that brings me to the other thing that you want, which is a right of first refusal or a right of first offer. If you are in a small space and you're like, I want to expand someday.
Right.
So in the space that we are right now, where our warehouse is, we have right of first refusal / right of first offer on all of the adjacent spaces to this space. Which means anytime those spaces become vacant, we are the first people that they come to before they go even put it on the market, which is favorable to them as well.
Oh yeah. It's a win-win.
But it's also favorable to us because we get to say, hey, we know you don't want to put this on the market, baby. Come on.
We got the deal right here.
We got it right here. Look at
sign
this.
the dotted line.
Talk to me.
Just sign it. But then it helps us because we're like, we're going to need more storage space for green coffee.
Okay, wait. Final bonus round. Do you
this is the part of the podcast where we start holding the mics.
do you need or should or want to add a non-compete to your lease? Have we ever been like, oh, I should have added a non-compete to my lease? Because sometimes what happens is you find a nice space, but there's a non-compete against you and you can't do it. And that has happened to us.
Totally. That has happened. I would say we have a non-compete in Dunwoody.
Oh, I didn't know that.
We do. Yeah. Which the out parcels are owned by a different company. So there is a Starbucks in the same parking lot.
They were there before us, though.
Which to that point, it's like they didn't have a non-compete on the space that we went into. So
you know who did? Remember? Fresh Market. They had to like change.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
Of something. They had to do a little workaround.
Yeah.
Because they serve coffee.
Yeah.
Or like sell whatever it was. But yeah. So, but with our first space, it's so small that if they like let another coffee shop open there, it would just like probably put us both out of not out of business, but it would just hurt both businesses, which also isn't good for the landlord.
Sure.
The landlord wants your business to succeed so that they don't have an empty space. To your point, it's like we have that. The space in Dunwoody is big enough to where it's like there probably could be another coffee shop on the other side. So you want to be careful there. And then with our roastery, it's just like
we're just an office.
It's like whatever, open another coffee roastery next door.
Yeah.
Okay. Other last thing. What do you guys think about the fact that like the big thing probably in America is these like developments and like live, work, play concepts, and the fact that everybody wants a coffee shop around? I just feel like that's something that just needs to be stated as far as like when you're doing a lease, you gotta kind of remember it. Maybe it is your first time, your first go, but like I think there's just it's more of a renter's market a little bit. I maybe don't have my finger on the pulse as much as I used to, but like, you know, I just feel like people are trying to find people to put coffee shops in places. Like I feel like there's a demand for retail.
Yeah, it's good. It's definitely good for developments, you know? And so use that to your advantage. I've said it before. It's like with a lot of spaces, they go out and say, we want a cafe here. And so with that, hearkening back to everything else we said, that is leverage. So use that leverage to your advantage, negotiate that into your tenant improvement allowance, your lease terms, and that could really be a big difference on your business being ultra successful or moderately successful or a failure.
We got through about half of the terms on the term sheet that's on the community. So
What? Okay.
It's true. We did.
Yeah.
I think we got to all the high points, but if there's a lot more on the sheet. So definitely sign up on the top link of the description of this video.
Yeah. I mean, to that point, if you're still listening to this video at this point, we want to see the entire coffee community thrive, but we can put that much more intentionality into our wholesale partners. And that's really more of a one-on-one type of relationship. So If you're starting your cafe, or if you have a cafe, maybe your wholesale partner is just selling you coffee and you're not getting that next level of relationship. Just go to our website, pop over to our wholesale page, fill out that form, and literally Ross will reach back out to you.
Facts.
We'd love to work together, and we are always looking to expand our wholesale partnerships.
Any closing thoughts, boys, before we press the stop button?
I hit you guys both some last things, so I gotta cut myself off.
If you're still listening, comment below the name of your shop. I'd love to know just who's out there listening to this pod. And have you already signed a lease? Is it your second location? Do you have 0 locations and you're looking at one? I'd love to hear about your life.
Hey.
Goodbye.
Tables.
So live your life. Hey.
Dibs.